Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you're watching the StudyIQ IAS English channel. In our today's discussion, we'll be understanding a flagship scheme of Government of India known as Jal Jeevan Mission. But why are we covering Jal Jeevan Mission today? You'll get to know this once I discuss the context of our today's discussion with you. Now, whenever a ministry is implementing any government scheme, naturally it requires money for that implementation. And to demand for that money, that nodal ministry raises the request with Ministry of Finance. Now, Ministry of Finance has a separate committee to deal with this issue called as Expenditure Finance Committee, which is headed by the Expenditure Secretary of Government of India. Now, what this committee does, it appraises the demand made to it by the nodal ministry, whether that demand is justified or not. So, upon appraising the Jal Jeevan Mission, the demand for which was made by the nodal Ministry of Jal Jeevan Mission, Ministry of Jal Shakti, Expenditure Finance Committee had actually lowered the financial demand made by Jal Jeevan Mission. That is, it has lowered the budgetary allocation by 46% of what was originally demanded. That is why we are going to discuss our today's discussion, which is relevant from our UPSC perspective, because any scheme that has been used automatically becomes important from our prelims examination. Now, in this discussion, we'll cover first of all what is Jal Jeevan Mission, how it is implemented, and another aspect about how this Expenditure Finance Committee works in appraising and ascertaining the demanding or demands made by any ministry. First, let us cover what is Jal Jeevan Mission. Now, you know, when this government came into power in 2014, it realized or it wanted to make India a developed country. But how can you make any country developed if the people of that country does not have access to basic resources, be it toilets, be it pipe connection of water, or be it electricity? Now, government also found out that in 2014, only 39% of our households had an access to toilet. So as to provide complete coverage of toilets in rural and urban areas, government came up with Swachh Bharat Mission, and in 2019, government achieved 100% toilet construction in all the households in our country. Similarly, government understood that only 19%, around 19% of people, that is 81.67% of people who are living in household, they did not have any access to tap connections which provided them with water. So as to provide 100% coverage of tap water connections, government came up with a Jal Jeevan Mission on August the 15th, that is on Independence Day in 2019, when from the ramparts of Red Fort, Prime Minister Modi announced this particular scheme. Now, the implementation ministry of this scheme was given to Ministry of Jal Shakti, which was a new ministry started in 2019. And the objective of this scheme naturally became to provide functional household tap connections, FHTCs, to all rural households in India by December 2024. And this was called popularly as Har Ghar Jal program, which means water will be provided to every house. Now, the target of this scheme was to provide 16 crore rural households with a functional household tap water connections. Right. So, this was the target and objective of this scheme. Does this scheme only had one objective? The answer is no. It had other objectives also, in addition to providing tap connections to every household. First, it prioritized that these tap connections will be provided to those households which reside in quality affected areas, that is, the water quality is not good in those areas, areas which are drought prone, desert areas, and villages which are under the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. We'll cover Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana separately. Also, the other objectives include ensuring a functional tap connections in public areas like schools, Anganwadi centers, Gram Panchayat buildings, health and wellness centers under the Ayushman Bharat Yojana, and also to the popular community buildings. Further, the monitoring of functionality of tap connections was also envisaged, because constructing and providing tap water is not sufficient. You also need to ascertain whether these tap connections are continuing to work or not. Also, it promoted voluntary ownership among the local community through contributions to be made by them, because when only people contribute the money, they'll treat that infrastructure as their own and take care of that infrastructure, right? Also, other objectives, it include ensuring that the water which is provided to them is sustainable in nature. That is, you are not just providing them with tap connections, you are providing them with water which is good enough to be used for drinking purposes and other household related purposes, which includes providing with water sources, construction of infrastructure and funding so as that regular operation and maintenance happens to those water connections. Additionally, it wants to provide and develop human resources which will include providing for construction, plumbing work, electrical work, ensuring that water quality is managed, and also to treat wastewater and protection of catchment areas. Additionally, it also provided to raise awareness about the significance of safe drinking water, because safe drinking water is also very important from our health perspective, right? So this was the broader objectives under which this scheme wanted to function. Now let's see what was done or what is to be done in order for this scheme to be implemented. First, that efforts will be made under the scheme to source funds from different sources, be it private sector, be it from individuals who are living in the community, and also achieving convergence with other government schemes. What I mean by convergence, for example, construction of the infrastructure will be done through Manrega scheme, while the people living in rural areas will be involved, so that to construct the necessary infrastructure, money will be diverted through it. Similarly, the bathrooms that have been constructed through Swachh Bharat Mission, they will be provided with tap connections so as to ensure their sustainable use, right? Similarly, development of in-village pipe water supply infrastructure is very necessary, because you're not just providing them with connection, you also need some kind of an infrastructure which will ensure storages of water from where you will provide households with the water, right? Also, development and augmentation of reliable drinking water sources is very necessary, like local storages, local ponds, community ponds, etc., from where you will supply the water. So, if those infrastructure is not constructed, the scheme will provide for development and construction of those infrastructure, and if those infrastructure are that, they will be augmented so as to increase the supply of water with necessary demand which will emerge from this scheme. Also, bulk water transfer and treatment plants will be set up, which will provide for treatment of water, which will be ensuring that this water is good enough to be used for drinking purposes, right? And for that, technological interventions for containment removal in areas and also to address water quality issues will also be done. In addition to that, what the government will do is that it will retrofit ongoing and completed schemes to provide fully functional household tap connections, which will provide at least 55 liters of water per person per day to every household. So you understand the demand of the water, how it will increase, and you need to provide necessary infrastructure so as to cater to this increased demand of water. Also, you need to treat the water which are used already by the household. So for that, you need grey water management. That is the water that has already been used and is not fit for drinking and other use purposes. So you need to treat those waters as well. Also, this scheme takes information, education and communication initiatives and human resource development, which will provide with the necessary human resource which we can use for construction of these infrastructure, maintenance of this infrastructure, and also to address any unforeseen challenge that might be due to occurrences of natural disasters and calamities. Because what happens whenever a natural disaster struck any areas, it leads to disruption in the infrastructure, and most cases it leads to contamination of the water sources. So if the people drink that contaminated water sources, they will naturally get ill. So you need to address all of this issue, and this is what will be done under the Jal Jeevan Mission. Now I told you the impact or the necessity impact of the Jal Jeevan Mission, that it wanted to provide basic necessities of life like a drinking water supply, okay? But this also has several social and economic benefits. First is that who is tasked majorly in Indian households to connect waters or collect waters in rural area, mostly these are women. So when we are providing functional tap connections to the households, naturally it will benefit mostly the women residing in urban areas. It will free up their time which can otherwise be used for social and economic purposes or more productive purposes. Therefore, it is estimated to at least save 5.5 crore hours daily for women living in rural areas. Additionally, it will also help prevent deaths that occur due to diarrheal disease, which happens due to drinking of contaminated water, and also it will reduce the mortality, especially among children who are under 5 years of age. This will reduce 30% of mortality of children under 5 years of age, and it will prevent nearly 4 lakh deaths that might occur due to drinking of contaminated water. So this was social benefit. Now let's see economic benefit of this. Economic benefit, that it will create both direct and indirect employment, because you are setting up necessary infrastructure, you will be procuring pipes, you will be procuring taps, you will be constructing water storage, right? So that naturally requires more labor. That is why it will provide almost 60 lakh person years of direct and 2.2 crore persons of indirect employment in India. Also, you need to maintain these infrastructure, which will also generate additional employment. So these are social and economic benefits of implementing such schemes, right? Now let's see the more important part. Now naturally, whenever we talk about any centrally sponsored scheme, the most common funding sharing pattern is 60-40, right? That 60% of the fund is given by union government and 40% of the fund is given by state governments usually. But this is different with Jal Jeevan Mission, because when it comes to sharing of the funds between center and states, this is 50-50 sharing basis between center and states for most states. Whereas states that are somewhat lesser developed, like Himalayan states and northeastern states, here the funding pattern remains the same as compared to other centrally sponsored schemes, that is 90 to 10%. That is 90% of the funds will be provided by union government and rest will be provided by state governments. Whereas for union territories, 100% of the funding naturally, of course, will be provided by central government. So what you have to remember here is this, that here funding pattern is not 60-40, rather it is 50-50. Equal funding will be provided by central and state governments. Now, what is the current status of the implementation of this project? I told you the original aim of the government was to provide 100% of household tap water connections by December 2024. But seeing the current status of this scheme as of December 2024, the coverage achieved was only 75% of the tap connections, which means about 12.17 crore of tap connections were installed, which was not 100%, rather 75% of the original intended amount. So this means that remaining households, about 4 crore households, they still do not have the functional household tap connections as of December 2024. So therefore, this Ministry of Jal Shakti proposed that the time limit should be extended to December 2028 to complete the remaining work. And naturally, to complete this remaining work, the Ministry of Jal Shakti demanded for extra money, and this extra money was, or this demand was appraised by the Expenditure Finance Committee, right? Now also, Finance Minister in a budgetary declaration, she announced that this scheme will continue till 2028 until the 100% of target is achieved. So this ministry demanded extra amount of money of rupees 9.1 lakh crore rupees, including a central share of 4.39 lakh crore rupees. But it also said that some money has already been transferred. Now we require additional 2.79 lakh crore rupees. And EFC, Expenditure Finance Committee, it recommended only 1.151 lakh crore rupee to be transferred, which is 46% less than the amount demanded. Now, from your exams perspective, you need not remember the amount that was demanded and the amount that was provided. What is important is how this Expenditure Finance Committee works. Okay, so let us try to find that one out. Now, Expenditure Finance Committee is a crucial body which functions under the Union Department of Expenditure under the Ministry of Finance, and it is responsible for appraising and approving public funded schemes and projects who have a budgetary allocation above 500 crore rupees. So whenever they have certain budgetary demands, naturally this demand is raised with Ministry of Finance, and this is appraised by Expenditure Finance Committee, and this committee ensures that government spending is made with efficiency and aligns with the overall fiscal policy of the government, that no ministry is spending more than what is required and the money is used judiciously and efficiently, right? Now, this committee is chaired by the Expenditure Secretary of the Government of India, and this committee only has the recommendatory power of cutting the cost, because the final decision of whether to increase the funding or reduce the funding, it lies with the Union Cabinet and not the Expenditure Finance Committee. So this committee only has recommendatory powers, and this can be overridden or overridden by the Union Cabinet. So now what options does the Jal Shakti Ministry have? Now Jal Shakti Ministry has three options. First, that the Jal Shakti Minister can take up this issue with Finance Minister to solve this issue. Alternatively, the officials of Jal Shakti Ministry can also approach the Cabinet Secretariat to request the Cabinet Secretary to resolve the differences between Jal Shakti Ministry and Ministry of Finance. And the third option is that the Jal Shakti Ministry directly goes up to the Cabinet, which ultimately have the approving powers of any budget, to increase the central share or keep it at the level which the EFC had already recommended. So in our today's discussion, we understood how Jal Jeevan Mission is implemented. What are the fund sharing pattern? It is 50-50 for most states, not 60-40 as against the usual centrally sponsored schemes. And we understood how the Expenditure Finance Committee works in appraising and efficiently allocating the budgetary money. But we also understood that EFC only has recommendatory powers, because the final power of increasing or reducing the budget lies with the Union Cabinet. Understood? Now, before concluding this session, I would like you all to solve this practice question and let me know the correct answer of this practice question in the comment section. So this is all from my side for today. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel if you want much similar videos about everything ongoing in the current affairs section. And I'll see you again. Please have a very good night.